I remember one of the first things that popped through my head is, oh my goodness, Roy Scheider, my hero, is going to get to hear the song. From the song, we've gone on to compose the music for The Shark Is Still Working, and I specifically told Roy Scheider that the soundtrack for this documentary would be dedicated to him, because as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't have the interest in film that I have if it wasn't for Jaws and Roy Scheider and the movies that he made. Absolutely.
So he's always been a big favorite of yours and a big inspiration for you.
Ever since childhood. And
yeah.
That's been the blessing of a project like The Shark Is Still Working, and I know you've talked to Eric and the guys before, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about Mr. Scheider and just what he meant to me. But yeah, we love Jaws, and Roy's the hero of Jaws. I think
that's right.
He really made the film so special, and just as we've gone along through production, I've had little moments of just little small blessings, and one of those was getting to talk to Roy.
Absolutely, I'm with you, and I can't wait to hear about those experiences. We have one more line that just came up. Let's see if this is Jake or James. Let's see, 615. Is this Jake or James?
This would be James.
Hey, James, how are you? Thanks for joining in tonight.
Yeah, good to talk to you again, Jamie.
It's good to talk to you too.
Good to hear your voice, Mike. Man, I miss you. I'm up in Minnesota right now, so I'm away from my home base and away from my buds.
Oh no. I want to ask you first of all. I mean, the Shark Is Still Working. Obviously, you guys appeared on the show several months ago and told us all about this project, and we're very excited about it. But tell me, Eric, you're mounting this project. You're looking to score your first big interview, and Mr. Scheider has to be the very top of the list. Tell me about that day that he contacted you guys and said, I'm in.
Well, our relationship with him really started back actually on my birthday in 2005. This was, right prior to Jaws Fest, and he was really the first A-lister that we got an exclusive interview with, thanks to Michael Roddy. And we got up there to his Long Island. My goodness, where is it?
I was in the Hamptons.
You guys were on Martha's Vineyard for a week, and then we all met on Long Island after that.
That's right. He's in Bridgehampton Island. Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy snowy disaster weekend, and it was a miracle we got to his house on time. But basically, the three of us, James, who flew separate, and then Michael and myself, met up at Roy's house on the beach, and he embraced us from then, from the outset, and was just so really excited with the premise. Obviously he's done many documentaries, many interviews over the years about Jaws, but there was something that really resonated with him about this project, and what he later explained to us was it was just a real simpatico with the fans that really attracted him to it. And
yeah.
So I think just from that experience interviewing him and the way he welcomed us, and even when the interview was over, there was no sense at all of, okay, thank you, you can go now. I mean, it was just sit down and relax, just let's chat, just so warm. And so we knew we would be in contact with him again, and we were hoping that the relationship with him would grow from there, but we had no idea that it would ever amount to what it became. At a certain point, we asked him, if we could use his name, in any way to help us as far as getting credibility with future interviews, and he was more than hell. He said, absolutely. So we basically made him an honorary or associate producer, and just by virtue of his name being attached to it, it's just opened doors that would never have opened for us. I'm convinced.
Well, absolutely. He's the man. And actually, he volunteered to do your narration. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, he did, and that's what I was coming to. Was it was probably a year or more since the interview when we got to the place where we knew we had to build a narration track, and until that time, we had built a temporary track with some local talent, and we had been thinking about different actors that who do voice work that would be good for it. Bill Mooney from Lost in Space. We had Peter Coyote was a possibility, Liam Neeson. These are all people we fantasized about getting. But it never occurred to us to get any of the, because Richard Dreyfuss also does voice work. And it never occurred to us to either ask him or Roy to do narration, because we thought it would simply be awkward to have, a third-person narration of the events that
Eric, it did occur to us. We had talked about it, but we shot the idea down quite quickly because
that's what I mean. I mean, we shot it down because we thought from the beginning it would just be too weird. I mean, they're in it, they're interviewed, but then one day we were I don't remember if he called us or we called him, and he just asked me out of the blue. He said, "Who you got doing your narration?" And we were giving him an update on the progress of it, and we said, "Well, we have Peter Coyote in mind. We haven't really settled on it." And he just kind of interrupted me and said, "How about me?" And his little peppy, feisty voice, and I said, it just hit me between the eyes. I'm thinking, why not, Roy? Oh my gosh, So, within 5 seconds, I was convinced this is the man to do it. I mean, when Chief Brody says, "Hey, let me do it," you don't quibble, you don't think about it, you just say, what
oh yeah, and a great voice too. I mean, a very great authoritative voice. James, when I know that you when you're looking at one of your childhood heroes, like all of us, from Jaws, and I know that you must have had some expectations before meeting him. What surprised you about him?
Well, when we pulled up to his house and we're kind of wandering around the house, he's got the main building, and then there's kind of a building off to the side, which I guess doubles as a guest house and his garage. And we're kind of wandering around going, which door do we go to? What side of this house is actually the front? And I just remember seeing these curtains pull open, and there was Roy Scheider, wearing sunglasses, but just this gargantuan smile. The other guys didn't get to see this. I was the only one that saw it, but man, what a smile! It just kind of jumped right out at me, and that's just one of those images that just one of those things that's tattooed on my mind forever. So that was the very first impression. But then we go inside, and we could have been talking to our local mailman. He was just so unassuming, and there was nothing Hollywood about the guy. Very, just a great host. He sets us up with drinks right away, and he doesn't want to get down to business. He doesn't want us to. He doesn't start talking about, okay, where do you guys want to do this? How do you guys want to do this? What do you have in the way of equipment? We just talked for, I don't know, what was it, Eric? 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes?
Oh, at least maybe an hour.
Just getting to know each other, so that way by the time the interview itself rolled around, everybody was already so comfortable and already so chummy. It made for a great experience in the interview. So that's kind of what jumps out at me. And then, of course, like Eric said, after the interview was over, there was no, all right, I'm ready to get back to my real life now. We talked some more and talked about some of his other movies. In fact, I remember thinking to myself, I'm ready to go now. And Roy,
you're the only one then.
Well, because it was such a long day. I'd just flown in that morning. I don't think I had a whole lot of sleep, but and I know we had a long drive back because we were staying on the west side of Long Island.
Yeah.
But it was kind of, Roy was the one who was keeping that whole thing afloat.
What a gift, though! What a gift! And I saw an interview with him, probably taken years ago at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. And they discussed this a lot. He loved and he gravitated towards young talent, and he wanted to be there for young talent and was genuinely interested in what they were doing. Did you get that sense?
I really did. I tell you, I was in contact with his agent a lot through the process of doing the narration, and I'm not going to discuss figures or anything, but basically what he asked originally. And this was from his agent. The amount that he asked originally was more than we could afford, but it was more than reasonable for who he was and what he was offering. And I told his agent, I said, as much as we love to do it, and this is not a gripe against what he's asking because he's worth every penny of it, but frankly, we just don't have the budget for it. And he came back with an offer that was probably 2/3 cut down. And offered us, it was an offer we couldn't refuse. So, the three of us are scrambling and borrowing money from parents. I mean, it was just a nut house situation. I mean, we were trying to scrounge up every dollar we could because we knew we had to take this chance, and we wouldn't have dared come down on what he asked because he practically gave us, when you consider who he is, and especially in terms of Jaws. So that to me demonstrated his heart towards, like you said, towards young.
Absolutely.
Because we were nobody.
Well, also, Eric. I mean, to answer the question more specifically, didn't Robin say to you specifically, like, I've heard Roy. I mean, Roy has told me a thing or two about you guys' project, and he loves it. I mean, didn't she say something to you like that?
Yes, he did. I'm glad you brought that up. He did.
Which also, the engineer who recorded our narration, her name was Cynthia Steele. She's sitting in the booth with us, and every time Roy would step off to another room or someplace where he was just away from us, she'd lean over and she'd say, "You guys have no idea how much he loves this script."
And Cynthia had worked. She was pretty much his main sound technician on everything that he does, voice work-wise. So she was very used to working with him, and said, I've worked with him on several projects, and I can tell you guys, he really loves this one.
Michael, you got to meet Mr. Scheider later than the rest of the guys, right?
I did. Actually, what happened was, it's interesting. You're talking about young filmmakers. I wrote Roy a letter when Eric and James and Jake went to go record the narration, and I was just thinking, I mean, to finally get this opportunity, in my early 30s, after following his career for so many years, I was like, what do I want to say to this man? And I was able to, I don't know, it was just a real nice, eloquent letter I wrote for him. I also gave him a copy of a video I had of Curse of the Living Corpse, which was the first movie that he ever made.
Oh, wow.
So I did that and made a CD for him, and Eric and James and the guys were kind enough to give him that package. And apparently, during a break, Eric told me that he read the letter, looked up, and I'd already got to talk to him once on the phone, but this was just much more personal. And Eric put him on the phone with me. Apparently, Eric said he said something like, "We got to do something for Mike." The letter pretty much stressed, and I think there are a lot of Roy Scheider fans out there that probably feel like he might not have got his due,
right,
or he didn't get the appreciation that he deserved. And in the letter, I just made a point to stress that I wouldn't be a part of the creative, genius, or not genius, but the creative force behind The Shark Is Still Working if it wasn't for him. And I pointed out that it wasn't just Jaws that was special that he did. I mean, we've got The French Connection, 7-Ups. I mean, that's got one of the best car chases I've ever seen.
Amazing, yeah.
All That Jazz, Marathon Man, Blue Thunder, all those great movies. And just to talk to him and to hear him, I just remember him going, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I was like, I just really felt like I made a connection with the guy. My mother had cancer at the time.
Right.
And I'd mentioned that in the letter, and it was pretty emotional because Roy was going through that. And just to give you an idea of just what a sweet guy he was, I remember him saying, "Well, send your mother my love and save some of that love for you." He said that at the end of our conversation.
Wow.
And it was just so special that somebody that you admire for that long and somebody that, has that fame could be that down-to-earth and sweet. He was just a class act.
And I have to say that, I was on the side where Roy was when he was having that conversation. I had a video camera, and I was so tempted to videotape this phone call that they were having, but
Eric wants to videotape everything.
I videotaped around. Yeah. but I really I wanted to have some kind of record of it, but I really felt like this was a real personal moment between them, and I can tell you, I mean, I was standing kind of off in the wings, away from Roy's line of sight, and he wasn't a guy that was looking at his watch and, okay, who's this guy? Let me get this conversation. I mean, you could tell he was really engaged
invested
in this conversation. Yeah. He was reading this letter, and I mean, you can tell a lot from somebody's body language. I mean, you got to keep in mind this was late at night. We were already running behind schedule, and it didn't look like we were going to finish the session that night, which we were supposed to. We ended up doing it over 2 days. So he had every reason to want to get in and get out, just from a schedule perspective. But he took his time and was he was really into it. And I made sure that Mike understood that, because you can get away with
anybody out there who may be listening to this that followed his career and was just like, why isn't this guy, why are they putting Paris Hilton in movies and not Roy Scheider? I don't understand.
You're right. You're right. I feel like this is a big crusade with Movie Geeks United too, because he was such an incredible presence on screen. And obviously, I guess you could look at his career and say the 70s brought the most opportunities for him. But I mean, he was doing movies up until the very end, and very, very fulfilling collaborations, and
he still more movies that haven't even come out yet.
Absolutely, we have some of those filmmakers, later on in the show. But what a dynamic presence! I mean, just incredibly strong presence on screen that we'll never forget. And gentlemen, I'm so sorry that we have such a short amount of time for our segment tonight. But thank you all so much for joining us, and you guys are welcome back anytime. And we want updates on the film. We want to know when we can see this thing. Is there?
We want you to know that too, Jamie.
Well, we can tell you this much, Jamie, and we haven't officially announced anything, but I feel like it's fair to say something about that. Universal has it in their possession. They love it. It's an uncategorical love fest. I mean, they think it's wonderful, and they definitely are interested in doing something with it, but they really are trying to plan out the next year, in particular with it being Universal's, I think it's 100th anniversary next year.
Okay.
So I think they're planning a lot of things, and they want to do it right. So.
Well, I cannot think of a more perfect occasion to release it than that. And guys, please come back and join us. And thanks so much for sharing your memories tonight with us. And Michael, thank you so much for the music. We're going to play another one of your songs at the end of the show, and it's in honor of Mr. Scheider. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Jamie. And I know you're short on time. I think Eric has a real quick clip of Roy for you.
Yes, Eric. I'm so sorry. You had something that you wanted to share with us about Roy. Go ahead and play that now.
This is just a line that he said. This is an outtake from The Shark, and I thought it was just a good way of ending our little segment here. Let me play it for you. This is Roy off camera.
What would you like to communicate if you right now could take this camera and you could communicate to everybody that had just a love for Jaws and a love for your character? What would you say to them?
Well, I think if the movie has any, besides its marvelous entertaining features, its message is that, not a message, but it's a feeling that you get when you leave the theater after watching a stumble bum like Brody, save his neck by just doing what almost anybody would do in a situation. You get a gun, you get out of the boat, you try to save yourself, you get up on the mast, you shoot the thing, you do what you have to do. So much so that you feel like you've done it. You have done it. Everybody sitting in the audience did it, because I certainly did not show any courageous aspect of myself up to that point. And I wasn't even being courageous. I was just trying to save my ass, that's all, as the character. So it makes you have a little more confidence in yourself. And, perhaps if a situation like that should occur with me, I could probably do just as well as Brody did. That's what I think is important about the picture.
God bless you, Roy.
Absolutely. That was perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
So welcome.
Thanks for everyone.
Good to talk to you again.
Jamie.
Bye-bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
A wonderful group of filmmakers there talking about a wonderful artist. Let me bring on our co-host real quick, and then our next guest. We're running a little behind, but our segments will run just as long. Jerry, are you with us?
Yes, I am. That was a great segment. Jerry. That was wonderful.
Yeah, those are beautiful guys, and they really their lives were really changed by Mr. Scheider. You can tell, and they're very
absolutely. I don't see
touched
how
by
you
that
can't.
collaboration.
I don't see how you can't be changed by that.
You and I are going to talk a little bit later about Mr. Scheider as soon as we get our guests on. Our next guest has been waiting patiently, and I apologize for the delay. But Diane Ketchmar is here, and her book, Roy Scheider, A Film Biography, was published in 2002. And upcoming works from her include a biography on James Gardner, to be released in 2009, and a 50th anniversary retrospective of the sci-fi classic The Fly, written in collaboration with David Hedison, that will be released in bookstores this summer. For the past 25 years, Diane has been a university librarian at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, which is my neck of the woods almost, purchasing books and media for the university. Please welcome Diane Ketchmar to our program. Let's bring her up. Diane, are you with us?
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm sorry for the delay.
Oh, I know Mike and the other guys. They were working with me through the website to get the whole thing going, so I don't mind, waiting for them. It's a great thing that they're doing, and it sounds like they had a great time doing it.
It's absolutely so, but we can't thank you enough for being with us tonight. Tell me why you chose Roy Scheider as the subject of your first book.
Well, I'll try to give you the 60-second version since we're a little short of time.
No, we're fine.
But basically, my husband got me into Roy Scheider. When we were first married in the late 80s, he's like, "What, you haven't seen this movie?" Sit me down, throw it in the VCR. And when Sequest came along, we both decided we wanted to watch it, because by that time I had become quite a bit of a fan of Roy's at that time, because Johnny showed me all the good movies.
Right.
You got to see this. I had my own personal tour guide. And we got on the Sequest list, and since I was kind of the resident librarian, they were like, why isn't there, is there a book for Roy? And which devolved into, why isn't there a book for Roy?
Right.
And it's like, you know a lot of stuff. You're the librarian. Why don't you write a book about Roy? And then finally, Sequest came and went, and I was still on the boards, and, I made a lot of good friends. And McFarlane came along and said, you're a university person. We know university people write books. Why don't you write us a book? And I said, how about Roy Scheider? Because the thing is, you're supposed to look for a hole in the literature and find one, and nobody had ever written a book.
Exactly.
So I submitted it. 10 days later, they sent me a contract. I wrote the book, and what I was doing when I was writing the book is I would go out to Long Island, and I would go to the artist-writers softball game. Because I'd done a little research, and that seemed to be the best time to go. You could sit there and watch him for 2 or 3 hours play this ball game. And the security, they had security, but if you sat on the sidelines and behaved yourself, you could just sit and watch. And it was Roy being Roy, and it wasn't it wasn't an actor, it wasn't a part.
Yeah.
And what I would do is at the end he would sign autographs, and I would usually bring him something that was a little bit out of the ordinary, kind of to draw attention to myself. And first year I gave him a picture he'd never seen before. The second year I gave him something that Brenda really wanted. She was always very nice to me. Yeah. And by the third year, he kind of knew who I was.
Now, so was he aware that you were writing a book on him?
No, we waited until it was printed because the publisher wanted it that way.
Okay.
But he was fine with it. I bought him one the last year that I went to the ball game, which 2002, the year it was out. He signed a copy for me. I signed a copy for him. Christian signed my copy. We gave a copy to Hager, and we had a great old time the last time because somebody had gone to the Candy Kitchen and showed him the book before I got there, and said I was going to be at the game and give him the book and all this, and so he was looking forward to it. When we hooked up at the game, he just kind of stood there with his hands on his hips and says, "I know who you are." Because I'd been to like every game for the past 5 years, but I could only go once a year, and that was like the best time for me to go.
Tell me in writing this book, what made him unique? How did he revolutionize the typical leading man role in a way?
Well, he came up at a time when they didn't, he wasn't John Wayne.
Right.
They had Richard Dreyfuss, they had Dustin Hoffman, and they had Roy. These were kind of offbeat leading men. And the thing that Roy did so well is Roy would look right at the camera and be totally honest. Mm. He would always just kind of set his pace, set his ground, and look at you, and you always knew that whatever he was going to show you was real. He wasn't afraid to be emotional. He wasn't afraid to tell it like it was. he just kind of planted himself, and there he was, and you believe this man. He could project that. And in a way, he was sort of a throwback to Humphrey Bogart. A lot of people called him, the comparison, a lot of things that I read when I was researching the book was, he was like the 70s version of Humphrey Bogart.
Sure.
Because he was, New York, he was kind of small. He was only 5'10", but he always appeared taller on the screen because he could project himself out.
Well, that's something interesting that you mentioned his height, because in reading your book, there's actually a passage in there about how he got his first breakout role in The French Connection. It almost wasn't given to him because of his height, but he caused some kind of tirade that eventually led him to get that role.
The English director, you had to hear him say this in person because he would do an English accent. I don't remember who the poor Broadway director was, but he would imitate this guy, and when he would tell this story, and it was just you would be falling out of your chair laughing. But the guy was really getting on his nerves because he was trying to do his bit, and the guy kept interrupting him, and of course that would throw all his concentration off. And he finally lost it. Yeah, he had a temper, and he just threw the script out into the darkness, and that's when the guy saw him, and he loved to tell that story.
That's the quality that they needed for the movie right there. What particular performances of his are you taken by?
Well, you can't beat Jaws, all that jazz, or French Connection with a stick. But I always like the more obscure things. I'm fond of a little movie he made down in Texas called Night Game, which is about a serial killer in Texas at a baseball game.
Right.
I liked Last Embrace, which hardly anybody ever saw, but it was interesting. It was neat. She was psycho, but it was funny. I liked Executive Target, which nobody ever saw. I saw something called The Seventh Scroll that I got an Italian copy of, which I liked.
What about the Men's Club? Did you ever
the Men's Club?
That was interesting.
Those are good.
That was very interesting. You don't like him at all. He is but he's so unlikable. You're mesmerized.
Everyone's unlikable in that movie, if I remember, though.
Well, as my husband likes to call him, that was like one of the first disgusting, ugly people movie.
There's a lot of truth to that.
It was so true that it was painful.
It was very painful.
I'm sorry, Jerry. What really amazes me is take his performance in Jaws and in so many of his movies as well. He's the leading guy. He gets the job done. You could say that he's a tough guy, but he always shows the vulnerability. And I think that's something that our action stars of today have probably picked up from him and his performance in Jaws. That he shows the tough and the tender. I'm thinking of the scenes where with his child in Jaws,
with his son,
where he's so loving.
He was one of the first people to portray post-traumatic stress disorder on the screen in Blue Thunder.
That's right.
Yeah. Frank was Mr. Macho helicopter pilot, but a couple of times he's all the pieces on the couch because he can't deal with what happened in Vietnam.
That's right.
He at the end he goes out and gets the guy, but he was never afraid of being passionate. He was always passionate in his films.
Right.
There was that death penalty movie he made called Somebody Has to Shoot the Picture.
Shoot the Pictures, right.
He's very intense in that. He was very intense in 52 Pickup. Oh my God, that's
wonderful.
maybe a canon film, but that is one of the most.
It's John Frankenheimer. It's an intense film.
You can't watch that. You're going, go Roy, go, Roy, go. The guy's just a total scumbag. John Glover just. You're just so happy at the end when he starts playing Stars and Stripes Forever. You're going, go Roy, go Roy.
There's one movie that I want to talk to you about before I let you go, and that's All That Jazz. Because that seems like an actor's dream. Did he have to fight for that role, and what did you find out about his relationship with Fosse?
Well, what happened is that Dreyfuss got cold feet and left Fosse in a lurch. And Roy came in, and they're like, can you do this? And Roy's like, yeah. Can you do that? Yeah. And they clicked. They found out they had the same work ethic, that they felt the same way about the acting, about the performing, the whole 9 yards. And Roy could rise to whatever Bob wanted him to do. And he was so happy with him. And Roy Roy just basically left his, he just everything right on the table, did everything he wanted to do. Said it was one of the most cathartic experiences he ever had in his life, but boy, was he tired when it was done.
I bet.
They just meshed, and they could, and Roy was not afraid to go all that way. And I think it's a fabulous performance. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea.
It is blood, sweat, and tears on the screen, and Roy
Scheider rock star. Who knew?
It's a time vault performance. It really is.
You cannot watch that movie except walk away and go, wow.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you can just literally see the effort that went into that movie. I mean, he left nothing behind. I mean, it's all there.
What do you think his legacy will be?
Well, he'll always have Jaws. I mean, it's such a milestone. And he'll always have all that jazz. And I'm sure Blue Thunder, the guys love Blue Thunder. And, it's just a great movie. And, there are other things that he did. He did the Citizen Kane movie that people like RKO 281.
Right. Yes, he's great in that.
I mean, some people think that 2010 is a masterpiece. A lot of people, it didn't get a whole lot of box office, but I think it's come into its own. I saw a lot of quotes on that in the obits about, talking about your Visky from Kentucky and the hot dog thing. And I think another thing that he'll be remembered for is all the work that he did on the South Fork with the school, the Hayground School, and the saving the Sag Harbor Theater and saving the sign and all that. Was work with Stella Adler in New York City, and I mean, he was all over the island since like 1989. And there's so many things that they've done and did, and that the Hamptons Film Festival, he had a big hand in getting that going. So he had his films, he had his life on Long Island, and I think people will remember him. Like I said, he is an icon.
Yes.
And I think his 40 films, I think, stand up to just about anybody's. I mean, some people say, well, some of the later cable direct-to-DVD movies aren't any good. But I don't think he really ever gave a bad performance.
No.
He was always there. He was always inhabited. He was always,
And in terms of legacy as well, I mean, we heard it from the previous guest, his reaching out to the young filmmakers and really making a difference in their lives and how they feel about their creative process. I think that's a great legacy as well.
Well, it kind of started with Mr. Fingerprints. He got Bart Friedland started.
Right.
And then the Definite Maybe. Those poor guys couldn't get anything going until they got him. And, that was the first film released on the Internet. It goes on and on. He's done, I think this, If I Didn't Care, which got raves at the last film festival.
And we're about to speak to that filmmaker as well, yes.
Yeah, he helped get him started. Since he's been out on Long Island, he's made a concerted effort to help all these young filmmakers get going. The kids, like I said, the kids in the Definite Maybe. I know he helped them out.
Yeah, and we're dedicating the hour to him tonight, and I know that we're only scratching the surface, but that's just so telling of how extraordinary he was. And Diane, I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts.
Okay, I just want to say one thing before I go. This was posted on AP about 5 hours ago.
Sure.
It says the family plans a memorial this spring in Sag Harbor. In lieu of flowers, the family has requested memorial donations to the Myeloma Institute of Research and Therapy at the University of Arkansas of Medical Sciences, and the URL for that is myeloma.uams.edu. They don't have a specific thing for Roy right now, but if you go to the left-hand site map, it says make a donation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And that's what the family wants.
Thank you so much for letting us know that.
And I just figured let's get that out there. It's been up on AP for about 5 hours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Diane.
My website will remain active. It's www.royscheider.net. So if anything that happens after the fact with the 4 movies that are coming out and anything else that's done posthumously, bookmark my website.
Absolutely. It's a great website, too. I happened upon it the other night, and it's fantastic. Diane, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Okay, our next 2 guests have been waiting patiently, and we're running a little bit over tonight, as you guys I'm sure can understand, but we appreciate you being on hold for us. So let's get this started. We continue our celebration of Roy Scheider with Ben and Orson Cummings and Michael Drucksmann. Ben and Orson Cummings wrote and directed one of Mr. Scheider's last projects, titled If I Didn't Care, a film noirish thriller that cast Scheider as a local investigator. Michael Drucksmann directed Scheider in the 2000 horror film The Doorway. Mr. Drucksmann is also an accomplished author whose new book, Shadowcatcher, will be released later this month by the Center Press. It is a great pleasure to welcome Ben Cummings, Orson Cummings, and Michael Drucksmann to the show. And I see two lines here. 323, who's here?
This is Michael Drucksmann. By the way, it's Shadow Watcher, not Shadow Shadow Watcher, not Shadow Catcher.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Michael. 631, who's with us?
It's Orson Cummings. Ben, unfortunately, can't be with us, so you have half of the Cummings brother team here.
We'll take what we get. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Orson, tell me about, first of all, tell me a little bit about your project, If I Didn't Care, and the role that Roy plays.
It's a film noir thriller, sort of on the model of the old noirs of the 40s and 50s, set in the Hamptons, where I'm from, out in Southampton, where Roy has spent most of his time, as you guys have been discussing. Story of a trophy husband out here by himself, who gets himself into a bit of trouble that he shouldn't, as noirs generally tend to go that way.
Right.
And Roy played a policeman out here in the Hamptons, roaming the beaches, who likes to walk his dog, take it easy, who befriends this fellow Davis and tries to advise him that the path he believes he's on is going to lead to trouble, and he probably should think twice before going down that path. And of course, the guy doesn't listen, so then Roy has to be on the case and track him down. But it's more of a philosophical type of crime solving, where Socratic method. They sort of spend time talking, and he susses this guy Davis out, and he generally knows what he's up to, but the gray area is that they form a bond and a bit of a friendship, and so it's a little bit of a trouble for him to try to bring this guy down, because he likes him.
Right. Michael, what about your project, The Doorway, that you did with Roy? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that was a Roger Corman film. It's sort of interesting. It was we had about $1.50 to make the picture. We shot it in Ireland. This was an experience like I've never had. I had 1 week to write the first draft, and so and it was, we had no money, and I think Roy got most of the budget. He worked on the film for 5 days. He wanted to do it. Roger Corman wanted a horror film, and I don't like horror films.
Right. And
the money he gave me to make the picture, it wasn't enough to make the kind of horror film Roger wanted. So I decided, Roger was in Hollywood and I was in Ireland. And I said, I'm going to make a black comedy. And Roy read the script and he saw it was a black comedy. He said, I love it. Because I wanted Roy, because I was listening to your former guest. To me, he had the same quality as John Wayne. When Roy Scheider walks on the screen, everything's going to be all right.
Right.
He had that, like John Wayne, Robert Mitchum, Sean, all those guys.
All those guys, yeah.
Yeah, he had the same quality. And he comes in, these kids these college kids are in a haunted house, and Roy comes in the middle of the picture, and you figure he's going to save the day, and 20 minutes later, he's killed. And he loved that. He's supposed to be this paranormal expert, and he gets the whole thing wrong, and then he's killed. And he thought that was hysterical. So he had great fun on the picture.
I understand that the two of you spent a great deal of time talking and getting to know one another. And there was a. Forgive me if I'm wrong. There was an accident with his car.
No, what happened? Roy, I don't know if you've ever been to England or Ireland or whatever, but you drive on the other side of the road, and the steering wheel is on the other side of the car that we're used to here. And it takes a while. I was 58. I'm going to have to learn how to drive a new way. And Roy was a good 8-9 years older than me. And so one night we're all going out to dinner. It was Saturday night, and Roy, they had rented this brand new, I don't think it was a Mercedes or something like this, and for Roy while he was there, and so he wanted to drive, so we all piled in the car, and I was on the left side in the passenger seat next to him. There's a couple of actors in the back, and he's, this studio was out in the country about 20 miles north of Galway on the Atlantic coast, and so it's a two-lane country road, and he's zooming down the thing, and he's, he's not sure which side, and he cuts it so close to the left side of the road, the side mirror on my side of the car, he hits it against the telephone pole, and it goes flying off. Roy, look what you did. He says, that's what insurance is for.
That's great. That's great.
We got to be very friendly because, everybody else on the picture was in their 20s. And, we were a couple of old cockers. And, at night we sat and talked. And, he talked a lot about his family. He loved his wife. He doted on his kids.
Yeah.
He carried this picture of his little 3-year-old daughter in a bathtub. I said, Roy, someday she's going to hate you for showing people that. But he was so proud of his kids, and... I
want to ask you what he shared with you, his thoughts in his career, but I want to ask you that in just a little bit. But Orson, tell me what surprised you about him, meeting him?
Well, I guess when I met him the first time, it was kind of a funny little just anecdote. When there's a coffee shop out here called the Golden Pear in Southampton. I live right in the village, and we were going into casting, and Roy was sitting in the coffee shop. He often holds court out here. He's sort of as mayor of the Hamptons. And I saw him in there, and we had been thinking about him I actually grew up out here with Bart Freundlich, who directed Mythic Fingerprints and a bunch of other stuff. And
sure,
I had certainly followed Bart's path and watched what happened when he cast Roy in Mythic Fingerprints and kind of got going. So saw Roy in there, and I dropped my bag of food and called my brother, and I said, well, he's sitting in here. Should I just bushwhack him? And he said, what are you talking to me for? Get in there and talk to him. So approaching a guy like that in a cliched situation where you're some indie filmmaker guy who thrust yourself upon him in public, which I did, and the eloquence with which he took it, and he allowed me to make my little pitch and told him what we were up to, and he was very gracious in a situation like this, said, well, why don't you just mail the thing over to me, and gave me his address in Sagaponack, and I'll read it and, see what I think, So I ran across the street to my apartment, printed the thing up, and ran right back before he had finished his cup of coffee, and plopped it in front of him even more aggressively, and could be, perhaps the end of a relationship right there with that sort of tact. And he thought it was really funny. So he had a sense of humor right away, and he said, all right, you're a bit of a go-getter. I get it. I'll read it and I'll get back to you. And he called us 2 hours later.
Oh, my goodness.
He had taken it home and read it, and he said, I don't know who you guys are, but this thing's terrific. Why don't you come over tomorrow for tea, and we'll talk about how to get this thing made. So he then had us over into his home. I mean, this all happened. It was a quick courting ritual. And so I'd say just his ability to tolerate someone like us, who we'd never heard of, and let us get this far that fast, and to actually read it without going through his agent, and to just sort of give us a shot. And then he had us over for tea, and next thing you know, he's regaling us with tales about being on set with Schlesinger and Marathon Man, and telling us great stories about working with Bill Friedkin. And the whole time we were determined not to bring up Jaws and not mention anything about, a bigger boat or anything like that. We were just dreading it because we figured he'd certainly heard enough of it. But he then asked, after we told him everything, and it's this, Hamptons are a beach town setting, and it's a world-weary sort of cop who walks his dog on the beach, and he says, all right, so how do you think the audience is going to see me when they watch this picture? Of course, he assumes we'll get it made at that point, which for us is, hard to believe. But my brother Ben sat back and said, I guess it's kind of like they're going to see you like your Chief Brody, and it's much later down the road, and you've seen everything, and you're trying to tell this guy it's not worth it. Take it easy, walk your dog, enjoy the sunsets. And that's kind of how they're going to see you. And there was this little pregnant pause. And then he cracked up, I said, I guess that is how they're going to see me. And then totally deadpan. I don't have to wear a uniform, do I? No, right. Plain clothes. All right. Cool. So he was really gracious, and, it didn't take long to... Bottom line, if he liked the script or he likes your material and respected you, I think, as an artist, then he let you in right away. Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
I got to tell you, you're very lucky catching him after his coffee, because when he was in Ireland, you didn't want to talk to him before he had his coffee in the morning. That could be a grump, I tell you.
Right.
So Michael, what kind of stories did he hear?
We all lived in the same house. I don't know if you've seen the film, but it's a haunted house movie, and the exterior of the house is actually the house that we lived in. It was a manor house that Roger Corman had built, for his actors and directors, etc., who we brought over to Ireland because it was cheaper than putting them in a hotel. And we had all our meals together. They had a cook and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
What kind of stories did he share with you about his career that you savored the most?
Well, we talked about, when he did this, obviously if you're going to do a picture with Roger, your career is not on the upswing. And we talked about that. And I had always felt that, I've been in the business, since the mid-'60s. I started out as a publicist, so I have a pretty good feeling for the business itself. And I was curious. I think the thing where I noticed his career starting to go downward was when he did the Russia House.
Yes.
Because he took, I said to him, why did you take below the billing, below the title billing? Because you were, at that point, as big a star as Sean Connery and Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean, at the very least, you should have the same size and Roy Scheider as. And he had made enemies. He was very upset with Universal because he felt after Jaws, they brought him back for Jaws 2, and they didn't give him a raise. He felt, with the success of, he was under contract to Jaws 2, and, they didn't give him a bump in salary.
Right.
When they came to him with Jaws, the thing I think was going to be the next Jaws, he refused to do it. They offered him $2 million, he told me, and he refused to do it.
Right.
There was also a series that he was supposed to do in Germany, and I don't remember the title of it, but he was signed for it, and he thought it was going to be shot in Germany, and they decided then to shoot it on a back lot in the United States, and he bought his way out of it. He refused to do the series, and I'm not sure if they sued him or whatever, but it cost him. He was the type of guy that this is what I think is right, and I don't care about the money. And if you try to screw me, I don't care. I'm not. I'm cutting you out.
Right.
So he made enemies.
At the same time, though, I mean, he seemed to be someone that just enjoyed his craft. And we talked about this. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There was this tribute we did to Alan Pakula, the director, and he ended up his career doing Consenting Adults. And one of his close friends said, "Alan, why are you doing Consenting Adults?" And he said, "I'm just as excited to do this as anything else because I get to practice my craft." And
that's about the business. People ask me why I work for Roger Corman. I said because you go where the work is.
Absolutely.
I enjoy telling stories, and anybody who will pay me to tell a story, that I want to tell, I will, I want to do it.
Orson, what kind of collaborator was he on the set?
Well, it was certainly situational. He was definitely he did his preparation. He was very intense with his preparation. I remember one of our first meetings at the Candy Kitchen out here. The amount of notes he had taken on his script were pretty intense. I mean, it was written up everywhere. He had little thoughts for every line, and he had clearly gone through it, Lord knows how many times. But and then on set, watching him, it would all depend. Like if he had a scene coming up in an hour, he would want to be by himself or with the actor he was reading with and just sort of doing his own thing. But on the other hand, he certainly was open, and again with the script, if he knew what the scene was about and he understood and it was well written, it was pretty simple. But every so often, if he had a doubt as to what the motivation was or why the scene existed in the film, he was there could be some heated discussions or quick, sort of, you better have your answers. Know what to tell him and why. But he was great. I mean, one of the funny things I think of, too, his wardrobe was pretty funny, and just how he specific and meticulous he was with his craft, that we went back to a sort of Columbo-esque cop. We even gave the guy a trench coat, and it ended up being, we had a couple of choices, and he liked the one that was sort of the classic trench coat. So it's great. It was a bit of an homage, our whole piece, to these older noirs. So we went with it, and it was great. But the costume designer kept ironing and cleaning the trench coat every night. And the first thing he would do in the morning is show up. And the first time it was a bit off-putting because he threw a bit of a tantrum. God damn it! He had that voice. What'd I do? Clearly something's wrong. And he took the jacket and threw it on the ground and stomped it and threw it in some muck. And he said, I work really hard every day to mess this thing up. There's no way any guy who wears a coat like this isn't got a filthy coat, that's been through the trenches. And she kept cleaning it, and it would drive him mad. And so he would really rub it in the dirt and step on it. Oh, wow. So it looked like it should, and he was clearly right. And so, I don't know, I found, as far as collaboration goes, he was usually right if he made a point. Otherwise, he was pretty quiet, and he would go with the flow. But when he opened his mouth, the other funny part with the wardrobe was the other one, was where he showed up and he was only going to be seen from the waist down, so he didn't wear his pants. He wore a pair of sweats, and because he knew all you're going to see is his turtleneck sweater and his trench coat while he's interrogating someone with no sound through a window. So he didn't wear his pants, and the wardrobe person was all fired up that she had put this pair of pants together, and he's absolutely not. I'm not wearing my pants, and she was, pretty much in tears practically. She's really young and just getting started, and Roy won't wear her pants. And so we had to tell her, look, sweetie, you pick your battles. At this point, Roy's not wearing the pants. That's fine. Just forget it.
But as
no
they
pants.
say, if it's not in the frame, it doesn't exist.
Of course not, but she didn't understand that. They were a nice pair of pants, and Roy doesn't want to wear the pants. He doesn't wear them.
I had the same thing in Ireland with this one actress who she was supposed to wear this very formal dress, and we were only shooting close up, and she's wearing jeans under, just below her waist.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, gentlemen, I'm so sorry that we're out of time, but this has been delightful to talk to you both and have you share your experiences with Mr. Scheider with us. And please come back and join us anytime in the future that you'd like.
Thank you very much. Anytime. It's a great program, and he was a terrific person. Feel honored to have been able to work with him and get to know him.
Thank you, Orson.
Yes, thank you very much.